Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name is Bianca Lucchesi and you're here with the Emerging Writers Festival on 3CR today. Before we go ahead, I'd like to acknowledge that the Emerging Writers Festival and our show today takes place on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as to any First Nations listeners today. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. For those of you who are not already familiar with us, the Emerging Writers Festival is an annual storytelling festival held in Naarm during September, and we're all about supporting, developing and platforming emerging writers and storytellers of all kinds. Each year we deliver a program full of performance events, panel discussions, professional development opportunities, and published projects to celebrate emerging writers all around the continent. This year's festival is running from the 11th to the 18th of September, with a mix of in-person and online events. You can find the program on our website, which is emergingwritersfestival.org.au. There are plenty of amazing events on there. We have a really exciting program this year, and we are a majority-free festival, so we'd love for you to come along and get involved and hang out with us. We do have an open artist call-out that goes live in January every year. That's how this show came about, so do keep your eyes out for that next year. You can pitch ideas for panels, workshops, and various other creative projects. We are recording this at the end of June here in Naarm. It's a politically turbulent time and, of course, a very difficult time for many communities across the world right now. So the conversation you'll be hearing today is very timely. We're incredibly lucky to have some amazing artists in the room with us who will be sharing their knowledge and perspectives on the topic of folk music, particularly in the Swanaka region, and they'll be looking at how folk music can help us understand both the past and the present. This conversation will be hosted by Jahan Xanlü. Jahan is a Swiss-Iranian Central Asian writer and artist, currently based in Naarm. Jahan mixes electro-acoustic Iranian and Central Asian instrumentation with industrial and doom metal motifs alongside traditional improvisational frameworks and instruments fashioned from found objects. They advocate within the internationalist community radio movement, featuring and hosting shows on HKCR, 3CR and RRR, among others. But they always try to represent the locale by interacting with local communities and found objects. You will also be hearing from Astghik Lusaberyan and Damoon Jehani. Astghik runs a folk and industrial musical project called Blood of a Pomegranate, which blends the ancient melodies of genocided ancestors with apocalyptic foreshadowings of industrial nightmarescapes. Damoon is an artist of Kurdish and Persian heritage. He has a passion for traditional music, and he is deeply embedded in political struggles for justice across the Middle East, including regime change in Iran and rights for Kurdish people. So a very warm welcome to all of you, and over to you, Jahan.
Thank you, Bianca. Folk legend Pete Seeger once described his artistic role was to sing truth to power and allow people to participate but don't have power and to have a say in the conversation. In his mind, this was a far more important element to the fabric of folk music than any musical aesthetic or formal code. It was a social function to amplify marginalized voices and democratize storytelling through sound. While the term folk music itself is a Western construct, often used to categorize non-institutional musics or orally transmitted musical traditions, its utility lies in drawing attention to a deeper global phenomena across the world, music that emerges from the people for the people. Such music does not rely on any formal training, standardized instrumentation, or affiliation with elite institutions. It exists as a living current, like a river, constant in its presence yet ever-changing in its expression. It adapts to its surroundings, evolves with each generation, while preserving its function as a vessel of communal memory and resistance. As such, it is vital to recognize folk music's role to protest against power, even if we have to sometimes read through lines of subtle imagery and metaphor. Especially, it is important to use this against the powers that be that might otherwise reinterpret folk music themes for their own fascist tendencies. Nowhere is this more relevant today than in the Swanaka region, one that has become a playground for superpowers extracting its wealth and culture, and a never-ending battlefield for the people living in it. Recently, we have seen Palestinian dubke songs emerge as a platform for anti-Zionist voices around the world, Persian protest songs even winning Grammy Awards, and music festivals taking over city squares in Georgia as a stage stage to protest. I'm incredibly excited and honored to initiate this discussion with Astghik and Damoon, where we'll be discussing radical themes in folk music within the Swanica region. During the program, we will each perform a specific song. The first question, very broad theme. What is folk music to you?
So I think folk music and, just like you said, Jahan, right? Like, what does it mean to you? You can generally think of it as like a very historical thing. So what sort of draws me to folk or traditional music is that something that continues throughout time, like our cultural celebrations that we have. And it shifts as well. So something that we're listening to today or an edition of a folk song is going to be radically different from years and years ago. But that idea of something being produced hundreds of years ago, undergoing generations of changes and coming now to the modern era of technology. And other than that, I just love the melody in folk music. Like, it tends to be a lot more simpler, and the themes that applied hundreds of years ago still have so much relevance for today.
How about you, Astghik?
I really liked everything you said, Damoon. The thing that inspires me the most about folk music is that, like, it comes from a different sort of, like, material condition than we are living in right now. And it kind of shines through the music itself because, like, nowadays we live in capitalism and we have the idea of intellectual property. So if you make a song, it's yours, it's only yours, it doesn't come from anywhere but you, and it belongs to you, or, whoever you have signed your rights away to or whatever. But, like, folk music, especially, like, Armenian folk music, it comes from a feudal system wherein, like, you have people, like, often just, like, peasants who are working the field, living their lives. They've heard someone sing a melody passing by and they start singing it, but it's not quite the same as what they've heard, and they're singing it in their own way and they're putting their own words to it, and then, like, that's transmitted to someone else and they're going to do the same thing, and eventually a song is going to emerge that is, like, not really anyone's, but it's kind of like that region's song. You might have, like, dance called, like, Aparani Par, which is, like, the dance of this region of Aparan, for example, or Erzerumi Shoror, which is, like, another dance, from Erzurum, like, historical territories. And so, like, folk music becomes this thing that is, like, communally constructed and belongs to the place more than the person itself. It also transforms over time, and there's a certain kind of poetry to the way that, folk music is just, like, a bunch of popular sort of themes like love, or like love that is unrequited. It's a very common theme in Armenian folk music, or love that was lost, grief, and all these sort of things. But then, like, you have moments of revolutionary rupture in times of oppression of the Armenian people, like in the times of what led to the Hamidian massacres and the Armenian genocide and all these horrible atrocities that were done to our people. And, like, the popular themes become themes of revolution and of resistance and of strength, like strengthen unity, solidarity. And yeah, like, folk music ends up being something that was collaboratively constructed in, like, a village setting, and then it becomes like a radical weapon to, like, boost morale for revolution and for resistance.
It's really interesting for me how folk music can always the basis for things. It can bypass censors because it's so, like, intrinsic to the people. Yet these themes, like, even in unrequited love or loss, these are so prevalent in so many kind of revolutions and so much public disobedience. It's always like a connection to what you're fighting for the tragedies and the happinesses that you will have in a better society that you might be fighting for. So I guess, what does it mean for you guys sonically? Does it have to have a certain style? Does it have to have a certain instrument?
Well, I guess that, like, now that, we have communities, we have nation states, we have this idea, like, when a lot of folk music was created, right? We didn't have sort of these nation state systems. We didn't have people's identities being defined by their ethnicity. It was by their villages, right? Or by their religion. It would rarely expand beyond sort of their localities. The religion is the most it would go. And so, but now, we're a nation state system. Now we're different ethnicities. With our different folk music and traditional music, we sort of expect and hear very similar sort of themes. So, like, the thing that you talked about with Armenian music and talking about, like, the loss of love or whatever, it's just like we have the exact same thing in Kurdish. One thing that you said that really reminded me of a lot of Kurdish sort of folk music. So we call it dengbej. And with dengbej, it's literally just like an oral history There's barely any instruments. It's just like a person kind of in between talking and singing. And through that, you're meant to show emotion. And the way it just kind of just carried on throughout history is someone would hear someone doing an oral history and be like, that's great, and then try to imitate that. And the thing is that not everyone could imitate it, the sort of idea behind Dangbej. Because a lot of Dangbej is sort of about love, tragedy, and surprisingly enough, it's really narrated from like a female perspective, like a woman's perspective. It's usually done by Kurdish male singers, but the perspective in a lot of the Dangbej sort of stuff comes from like a woman's perspective. And it's like grappling with just like societal issues and stuff. But going back to the point, you really couldn't, not anyone could do Dangbej or imitate it. The idea was that for your voice to really come out, for the emotions to really show, you had to go through some tragedy in your life to really get to that. And I just wonder, like, is there anything sort of similar in like the Armenian context in terms of like the sort of musical oral histories, or?
I mean, like, I'm sure there is, but, like, I'm not super aware of, like, a direct parallel. Like, the only thing is, like, I could compare it to, like, Ashur culture, which is the traveling bards, and they would be kind of, like, traveling village to village, collecting stories or, like, experiencing life, and they would be turning that into folk songs. Like, a traveling Ashur is, like, basically a folk musician. But, yeah, like, when you're talking about Dengbej, is that, like, I don't know, when I listen to, like, Hunerge Hawelat, that, like, Kurdish, like, the Rojavan, like, folk music YouTube channel, they'll sometimes like have like a drone where like all the music stops and there's a drone and there's one person that's like kind of belting over the top of it. Like it sounds semi-improvised, but it's like very lamenting.
That's it.
Yeah, fuck yeah. That shit is so sick.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, like I don't think we really have that in... Yeah, I mean, like not that I've come across, but also like Armenian culture is like quite repressed. Like the Sovietization really kind of like rejected certain components of Armenian folk traditions and tried to steer it towards more systemic music style, I guess, like more formalized, systematized. And there might have been things before we started having recorded music, because like honestly, like recorded music and the USSR started at the same time, more or less. Yeah. So like all of the recorded folk music that we have of Armenian folk music, either from diasporans or people who are colonized and having to liken themselves to whatever culture they are colonized by, or like they are in the USSR, like Soviet Armenia, and they have their folk culture forced into certain brackets that might not be true to its origins.
From Armenia and Georgia, you can even tell on an instrumental level how the Soviet Union has manipulated it, because of course they weren't allowed to have any reference to Jesus, would be examined heavily.
Yeah.
There's a few songs that managed to slip through the cracks. They went through like institutionalization, because definitely in the Soviet Union you had an institution enjoying these cute, funny little ethnicities who have these interesting songs that sound very new for average Muscovite ear. They have to translate it. So much meaning is lost. And it is really interesting seeing ethnomusicologists now, like in Georgia specifically. Their job is like, it's like archaeology. We have to repair it and try to see what the hell the Soviet Union did, because there's not even any records.
Yeah.
Still, like, I feel like when you can slip through those cracks, there's real power in that.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, even if it's on a Christian level, just that big like oomph to power to Wang that was trying to control that kind of music. Yeah, it's really empowering. Is it the same in Armenia? Like,
I mean, like in Armenia, there was like what you were talking about is real. Like we had like the systematization of like even like the duduk, the instrument that I played, like the folk instrument. It's like double reed, woodwind instrument. Like it used to be a much thinner reed and a much brighter sound, or like more diversity between the timbres of different reeds and stuff like that. And then like actually during the Sovietization, they standardized it to be like much stiffer reeds that give a much darker, more haunting sound, and that was kind of to distinguish it. So these sort of things happened, like you know, then like some kind of like resistance to it, but it's not really that radical. It's like late USSR, like late Soviet Armenian, the equivalent of what would be Ashurs, but these days, you know what I mean, or like post World War II days. They're just singing these really romantic sort of singer-songwriter sort of pieces that aren't really challenging power so much as they are just sort of singing about what their lives are like. And it's basically just that they have no political agency and therefore they have a really crippled kind of experience. So they're like alcoholics, or like, you know, or they're like womanizing. These things were like quite radical, obviously. And like this kind of more like barfly kind of culture was emerging, you know.
Barfly?
barfly, like a person that's always at the bars, like drinking a lot and like making like songs in the Armenian language, but it doesn't sound anything like the folk music really. Like it's like the Sovietization really kind of crippled that entire tradition. And now, like after the fall of the USSR, there's like a resurgence of the old folk traditions from a more nationalistic lens. And actually that's like what my music is trying to go against, or like trying to demonstrate the conclusion of nationalism is just war and genocide, especially in cases where you are not the empire. You can be nationalistic and revive these like revolutionary folk songs instead of in the service of like national liberation revolution, like using it in the instance of like trying to protect a nation state rather than like stateless sort of resistance. It's a different kind of story. It's a different picture, and it kind of like defangs the original songs.
What about the Kurdish scene? You guys you have a lot of different states.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this as we were having the discussion about Armenia, right? And how the Soviet Union really, the sort of the advent of technology, modern recording technology in the Soviet Union is, really sort of limited how folk music was, and maybe perhaps distorted it. Like, how would it have sounded, right? And I'm thinking, like, look, with the Kurds, so we're split up in 4 countries: Turkey, Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And for sort of contemporary music, we can definitely say that, the Kurds in Turkey, for instance, their melodies sound so much more similar to like Armenians or Turks. The Kurds in in Syria and Iraq, they can tend to have melodies that sound a lot closer to sort of the Arabic culture around there. And then the Kurds in Iran can have melodies that are closer to Iranians there. But then sometimes you even take a step back, and it's like these countries already share so much similar melodies and themes and stuff. It's like you go on a YouTube video for some like folk song from one country, and then there's like a bunch of people from another country being like, this is actually ours, right? Like, this is our song or whatever. But yeah, I guess like when I think about the folk melody, really in the Kurdish example, it feels like Dangbej again, like that sort of narration, that story type of singing is like the more prominent way that, people back in the day did music. And it sounds very similar in all parts of Kurdistan as well. But yeah, definitely like, because it gets strange. Like if I was to type Kurdish folk music on YouTube right now, it's going to get me songs from the 60s and 70s, right? That are like Western pop sort of influenced with Arabic and like Kurdish styles. And so it really feels like that is the only thing that remains. And there's definitely like melodies and instrumentals, but a lot of them feel like they can get interchanged with like the Persian Empire, right? Like sort of the music from there or from the Ottomans and so forth. Whereas Dangbej is like such a uniquely Kurdish thing.
Totally.
Kind of like, the throat singing that you have in like those sort of like Turkic or sort of Mongolian cultures and stuff.
I mean, definitely the 2 big regional institutions, like musical institutions of the Persians and the Ottomans. I don't know actually too much about the Arabic ones, but I assume probably out of Egypt or something. The Persian institution for even like tuning is pretty intense. You have someone whose job it is just to tune, and they
like
kind
musical instruments.
It's actually a member of like an Iranian orchestra, is someone who isn't on stage at all, but they tune every instrument and everyone has to play it their own way. And their job is extremely important, just as much as a composer or something. But then there's a feeling of you're just playing your instrument, but you're not playing your tuning, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Hardcore Persian institution's like the oldest one.
It's a very structured thing, like in Iran, like the sort of orchestras and stuff that you have. Like I feel like Iranians have had sort of a long affinity for much more structured music institutions. And it's like the one thing that's from my Iranian side. And then I go to the Kurdish side, and it's like so unstructured, it's like beautiful. Improvised. And it really sort of, I guess for me, draws a comparison about 2 different societies, right? I mean, Kurds and Iranians were really linked, but we're talking about 2 different power structures. The Persian Empire, which always had power to one extent or another, and the Kurds who were disempowered, right? And then that comes out, in a sense, even in the music, the more oral history, less on the emphasis on the written, right? And it's like the unstructured, improvised versus the more structured power structures. It'll be interesting to see if there's like any that draws parallels to any other sort of, I guess, ways of doing music around the world as well. And I'm sure it does.
I mean, I guess like the main institution we have now, if you can call it an institution, is just like Western rock music. literally the tunings that the Ottomans gave to the region. They wanted to be European, so they adopted the solfège. No more adjustable frets.
No, the Turks are now trying to bring that shit back, you know, like all those like social media content creators making shiftable frets on guitars. It's like almost all of them are just like Turkish musicians like trying to bring that shit back, because it's like you literally just like westernized some of the most beautiful things that you had. Kind of funny how that happens, like, because the same was with Armenian folk music as well. Like, you know, like we have microtones. Like our system is like made of tetrachords. It's like a series of four notes that like there's different four notes that stack on top of each other, and it's not necessarily based on the octave of a major scale like in Western music, for example. It's kind of like much more, I think, honestly, from my impression, it's just like Armenians trying to make music on very limited instruments. Like if you listen to the melodies, like you'll hear a zurna or something playing variations of a single melody that span 5 or 6 notes, and it's just like different combinations of those 5 or 6 notes to make the entire song. And like, it's, I don't know, I find it fucking cool, because it's like it keeps you in one place. It's almost like when you listen to like the blues music that came from the southern provinces of USA, because those guys all came from Africa as like slave trade, and like the blues from Africa was actually kind of brought into that context, and often they're playing not that many notes or chords, but they're playing so many variations of it, and they're finding so many different ways of doing the same sort of patterns, like to find different emotions in like a limited sort of thing. I don't know, like all folk music kind of has this limitation, like works out from limitations. And that's the thing about Western music as well, like the whole like the Western scale of 12 notes in the octave, that's like literally designed so that you can have like as large of a range of like frequency range as possible, and for as many instruments to play along as possible, because like you have like such a high degree of formalization of society in Western cultures that like you can get like 50 people together into an orchestra and like have them be like professional musicians that know how to play these songs. Whereas like if you have like a so-called orchestral sort of arrangement in Armenian folk music, that would have been just like whoever the fuck is, you know, proficient enough on that instrument, get them together, and like, what notes can you play? What notes can this instrument play? What keys can we play in? And it's all like modal as well. It's like we change the note on a fixed scale, and suddenly we're in a different sort of feeling, you know, like it's a different mode.
Yeah, I've always hated the term quarter tone, semitone.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it doesn't capture the essence of what is.
Yeah, and there's also particularities between them. Like the common one that everyone speaks of is like the second, right? Like the second note in the scale from the Western lens. It's like you can have like a minor second or a major second, or you can have a quarter tone between the two. But actually, if you listen to music from like the different places in the Swanica region, like that quarter tone is slightly higher or lower depending on which region you're from. And that actually adds to the character as well. Like definitely in like what you were talking about, I forget the word you were using in that improvised like storytelling. Dengbej, yeah. Like I noticed that the second is flatter than like when I'm listening to something similar from like Iraq, for example. Like it feels like when I listen to like Kurdish like doing that dengbej sort of thing, before you hit the one note, the tonic, like that, it's not quite a minor second, but it's definitely not a major second. It's like below the quarter tone, but it's above the minor second ever so slightly. I don't know. There's a lot of things like that. I'm a fucking autistic nerd. I don't know.
No, that's the
it's
thing
real.
It's a really good point, and it just made me realize as well with sort of dengbej, you don't sing too much from your mouth. It comes from your throat. That's why, again, I feel like I was thinking about the Mongolian throat singing thing, because it's like you kind of go like, it's like that, like, and your voice kind of,
do it. I had to do it.
0 days without
Mongolian
throat singing incident. But it's just like, and it kind of quivers, like it's not a stable note. Like when you hear these people sing and doing the narration, it's like, and like you can have different variations that sound much more sort of formal, I guess, if that's the right word. Like it's a very flexible and open structure. And it made me realize, because, you know, Jahan, when you approached me about this, the first thing I thought about was this sort of culture that we have in Kurdistan, largely Iraqi and Iranian Kurdistan, where it's just some dude on a core keyboard, you know, just like playing on a scale, And he's just like, it sounds cool if you listen to it.
Oh, it's brilliant.
But if you listen to the lyrics, it is just rubbish. Like, they're just improvising, like, she is tall, he is short.
No, that's exactly, yeah.
And that... And
But that's when you fucking translate it, though. But in the original, like, I still fuck with it. Like, I don't listen to that and think it's fucking weird when I hear it. Like,
Yeah.
Imiata's Chinata, like, my beloved is so tall, like a tree or something. Like, I love that shit.
No,
It's
I
the
love it.
energy.
And we get that for weddings. Like, for weddings and celebrations, it's just a guy just, like, making things up as he goes and playing, like, the same few notes on a scale. It's like, dun-dun-dun-dun. And again, it's just like, it really goes back to, like, how I feel like the Kurds lacking that sort of central power structure throughout history of means to sort of, like, centralize and represent yourself always, like, comes out in these really chaotic sort of forms. And what's actually interesting now, I think about sort of Armenians. In Iran, a lot of Armenians, the Iranian Armenians are known for a lot of like music and theatrical and cinema stuff. And so some of like the top like conductors, some of the top composers are Armenians, despite Armenians being like one of the smallest minorities in Iran. In the music scene, and especially in production, orchestral stuff as well, Armenians are like towards
we're
the top.
fucking overachievers. That's what happens when you get genocided. Suddenly you have to prove yourself to the entire fucking world, and everyone has to be like super stuck up about
you
shit.
and me
like,
both.
yeah.
Armenian.
We should make a band.
Well,
we'll make the most like strict, like self-critical band of all time.
oh gosh. System of a Down Part 2.
I feel like System of a
Kurdish
Down-
DLC.
Yeah. They would have been like way more chill though.
Well, anyway, I think this is a perfect time for our first song from you, Damoon.
Yeah, of course. So this is sort of a Dangber song. So this rendition is done by Khara Petakhacho, which I'll go into a bit later, but he's an Armenian guy doing a Kurdish oral song. And there's a reason for that as well, and I find it fascinating. And on top of that, sort of thing itself is called Loakina Metin, and like a lot of sort of folk melodies and folk songs, this one's about love. And it goes into sort of a Kurdish woman who is about to be married off to somebody, and she has a lover, right? And then she's like, you know, talking to her mom, being like, braid my hair, do this, and please let me go to Matin's house, my lover. Please let him come. When you translate it, it sounds weird. She says, abduct me, but the meaning is like, come and take me away from my
I know
forced
that.
marriage. And I find that fascinating because it's just like, this is something that you generally have in conservative rural cultures. I imagine it would have been a thing in Kurdish history for so long as well. You still have it to some extent, but yet in a musical form, there's resistance to it, right? To that sort of hegemonic idea of how relationships and sort of female autonomy and that too. Yep, so I'm just going to go through sort of the song. So, and yeah, first I'll say it a bit of a spoken word form. I'll try to sing it if I can, but I think the emphasis more is on the middle part, where we sort of like envy sort of music. We cry out a bit. So we have melodies that go like lay, lay, lay. So it's like you're crying out for something. And then I'll play it on piano afterwards, just like a rendition I've done as well, just so you get a bit of a melody for it too. Lele daike, heyrane terabe, bechwa ke bechoda ke, roja shemaye, sereme bosho u chemla minle mike, bisk u tembulake biranika minda cheka, hey le le le, hey le le le, hey le le le, hey le le le, hey delale. Havalu hojidi me, chuna mikhrabe shekha, tamamika de gila kurda, keçik digolele daika heyrane, bishin pe lawika metina delale male, bila beja nava singu beramin kichika, hejatamin dechwaze, bila gilabamin bechwaze, hejatamin diravane, bila bamin biravane, hejamin naravina sibuamin biraken, hey le le le. Hey le le le, le le hey delale. So those hey le le parts that we have is what I was referring to. It's just like, and the voice kind of quivers there. It's like you're screaming out for something or you're crying in a sense. And that's very, very common in Kurdish Dangber sort of things, is those parts in the middle. Yeah, and I'll do the melody on piano too, just so you have something to actually hear. If it's not me speaking. Yep, so I'm going to try sort of singing it, I guess. Don't have a singing voice. Piano's my forte, barely practice. But the main thing with this is sort of the emotions you get out of it, and I guess the melody and rhythm as well. So bear with my singing. Lele daike heyrane tarebe bechwa ke bechwada ke roja shemaye serame bisho u chemla mila mike bisku tembale ke beranika mende cheka hey la hey la delale Heval hojire mechuy mi wara shecha tamamika de geli akurda kechik digolele daike heyrane bishin pelawa ke metina delale mela bila bejanava singu beramin kecheka herjetemin de khwaze bila galabamen bekhwaze herjetemin de ravane bila bemin biravane herjemin aravane sibu min biraken hey la Hey loi, hey nalale. Hey felake me chayana gide me de chapene, naravina hey delale. Yep, so in English it's, hey mother, hey you whom I admire. I implore you, rise up with your consent, with God's consent, this Saturday. Wash my head and dress me, braid my hair and locks around my brow. All of our friends have gone to the far-off Sheikh's Maghrib, and all have fallen to the bottom of a deep valley, to the back of deep hearts and words. And the girl says, Mother, let me be your admirer. Send someone to the house of little Mateen boy. Let him come and be embraced in my heart and breast. And if he comes and wants me, let him come. Let him want me if he wants to abduct me. Let him abduct me. If he doesn't, tomorrow they'll send me away. Hey, lay. Our fate has been treacherous once more and deceived us.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so essentially, young girl falls in love with a guy called Mateen, but forced marriage. And why I do find that, I guess what I was saying before, a bit revolutionary is just like that messaging of, you have a cultural norm that really reduces women's agencies and who they can marry, right? But then through the musical form, these sort of tendencies are challenged. And that is why I find Dangbej interesting. It's a guy singing it almost all the time, but then in a lot of them, it concerns the issues that women went through. So it's a very interesting thing for sort of Kurdish folk music to have.
Sonic drag music.
Yeah, sonic drag music, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually also shares a parallel in Armenian folk as well, which is really interesting because actually, so this has a parallel in Armenian folk music because, obviously nowadays we do have women taking like lead singer roles in music productions. Historically, it was also like very much it's like the men will sing, and sometimes you might have like a choir where there's like a women's section of the choir, and like there'll be like call and response where like the man is like a lead singer and he sings a line, and then the men have to sing that in response, and then he'll sing another line, and then the women have to sing that in a response. And it's kind of like it's still like that patriarchal structure of like the man is like the front that is like sort of determining what gender is being spoken to and what is being said. But like that's kind of how it was done at the time. So like you would have men like singing from perspectives of women, but it's actually like this patriarchal sort of thing in the Armenian context. And then now you have it the other way where like because like liberal democracy or something similar to liberal democracy is the system there, you have like women coming forth and like having like these beautiful folk ensembles themselves. Like a lot of there's like a cappella ensemble, Zulal is the name of that band, and like it's just like three women like singing these beautiful songs, and sometimes they sing from the perspective of men, so it's kind of like had that, like liberal democracy does have like this like liberal feminist kind of edge to it as well. Girl boss edge to it. But no, it's cool to hear about like Kurdish folk music. Thank you so much for that beautiful performance, Damoon. Like I loved it.
One thing that you said as well that which sort of surprised me too was like, so even in the Armenian context, if it was like starting from the perspective of female, it'd still be through the male lens, like the male voice and stuff. And that's the one thing that confuses me with like a lot of the Dengbridge stuff. And maybe a lot of it's more recent, but it's like, I felt like with that one, like it's clearly talking about something more patriarchal. It's like challenging that. But then it's like, yeah, ultimately comes through the male lens. And just like you said with Armenia, like we have it in Kurdistan today as well, where it's like all these people have come out, women have come out and do music, and they're very celebrated and stuff too. That's one of the things that we have for sure in liberal democracy. But yeah, is it positive, I guess?
Yeah, I actually really appreciated in the like the Huranirkeha Welat. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation.
Yeah,
like,
the Roja Assyrian.
Yeah,
That's true.
that because like it centers women so much, and I actually noticed that like a lot of these videos, it's like usually you'd have like the men singing first, right? A lot of these actually start with the women singing first, and like a lot of the first lead singers, like the ones that are just like solo, like I've noticed that like they often choose people who have like visible disabilities, like they're wearing like very thick glasses or something, or like they might have like Down syndrome or something like that. They're the first one to sing. So it kind of like, I love the way that like the political structure of the collective kind of informs that, because like Rojava, of course, was trying to be a women's led revolution, like a not liberal feminist, but more of a like revolutionary feminist like revolution. And like you can see how like it is really trying to demonstrate like a more bottom up sort of thing, but it might also just be aesthetics. Who the fuck knows?
No, I think
combination of both.
Yeah.
I think anything that goes online, they need to have that aesthetic, narcissistic mindset, but also just,
I mean, like that's
bit,
an actually good applied form of like bottom up kind of.
Exactly.
It's not really like identity politics in like the fucking like inner north bubble kind of like.
No, what you said 100% is right, and that's the thing is like we have singers, of course, in Iraqi Kurdistan and stuff, like really big sort of like female singers now too, for sure. But in Syrian Kurdistan, where the political practice is rooted in this grassroots thing, even if that doesn't always translate in actual power decision-making structures, because their framework is based off libertarianism and some social and economic aspects, they do have grassroots things. And with the social stuff, you see that a lot more. Or things with like women communes, for instance, and Hungera Walat, like you were mentioning as well. And I didn't even notice, but now that I think about it, like a lot of the music does start with like female singers and disabilities and stuff. And I've actually noticed in both Kurdish and Iranian music quite recently, that's kind of like going through Instagram, is like there's a lot more people with disabilities coming out and singing. And I saw it again with the Kurdish improvisational stuff. And I think people at first were uploading it to sort of, in that sort of conservative Kurdish way, unfortunately, to like mock it. But then the more they did it, the more people started respecting it.
Yeah.
And then like literally the other day I came across like an Iranian singer with a disability as well. I think like had Down syndrome, but like a beautiful voice. And it was just like, it was like 200,000 likes on the Instagram reel, and everyone's like, wow. And like raising that awareness that like, you know, music doesn't have to be performed by the most prettiest or like what our society considers, you know, the normal and stuff, right? Like music exists in all forms, art exists in all forms, and that's been kind of cool to see as well.
Yeah. I think it actually, this is my analysis, I don't know if this is going to be shared opinion, but like I think it's like because people like in this like cultural historical kind of context, like this like historical geopolitical landscape that is shifting at the moment, people are kind of feeling insecure with the way that we've been doing things up until now. And culturally, people have been more open to the kinds of narratives and experiences of people more on the margins, the people who've been marginalized and oppressed or anomalized, isolated, like by the system itself. And now it's like people are looking for answers, and they're sick of looking for answers in the old places, you know, in like the glitz and glam sort of like. Now people, it's almost like a lot of art these days is like very dark, very grimy, very grim, apocalyptic. And then there's a bunch of art that's like people looking to people of marginalized backgrounds. It's almost like the mockery is the face of the fear the conservatives feel, because it's like they don't want to be any lower on the hierarchy. Like conservatives know like how fucked this system is. They just don't want to say it out loud, because it's kind of like the way that like abuser sort of dynamics work in the local scale, where it's like, like the abuser will have a lot of power, and like everyone will want to kind of like gain access to that power because that power is like material improvement to their quality of life. And so like they will pretend like the horrible things aren't happening, and like really like capitalism is that to a global scale. Like, and yeah, like people are just looking for the fringes now. And so like the mockery, like that projection of the conservatives' shame becomes actually they're mocking it because they are engaging with it from a place of fear, and eventually that fear goes away when they see it enough times. And like if these people who are making music, you know, from marginalized backgrounds keep shining, like it does break down that fear, because it's eventually like, what the fuck is wrong with me, you know what I mean? Like people just kind of like wake up to it a little bit, you know. It was the same with like queer stuff. Like now it's like less stigmatized in certain places just because like more people were exposed to it, and they're like, oh yeah, like my friend is trans, and like I grew up with her, and like I did see her struggling with gender until she started transitioning, and now she feels a lot better. And it's like, yeah, otherwise fearful conservative types might end up having a heart after all. It's just like whose heart is hardened and whose is like not hardened by the horrors, you know.
Do you know what's interesting? I've been thinking about it now. We're talking about how music and like folk music can be co-opted by the state. The one time the state will have handicapped people, I'm thinking of Iran this, is when they have like some kind of military parade, and they'll make sure to have like an imagery of actual war and someone who sacrificed their legs for the state. Because there always seems to be that like initiative to show actual victims of war, and in that nationalistic way, like, look at how much he loved his country, he blew his legs off.
Yeah, and it's also like, look, we pay respect to the ones who sacrificed, you know? It's like pretending like they care.
And it's a big part of our sort of culture in the Middle East as well, right? Like this idea of sacrifice. I mean, it's a global thing, definitely. Like, it's not isolated to one part of the world. But in our culture, like even in our sayings, like "Ghorban beram," right? Like our sayings, like that, it's like I'll sacrifice myself to you, and that is something you'll say in a regular context in like every conversation, right? It's just like a form of endearment.
Can you say the phrase again?
"Ghorban beram."
Cool.
Yeah, and Kurdish would be "Qurban ben," which is like it has sort of in that sense, like the wording itself is like related to Islam, like Qurban and sacrifice. But a lot of those things even precede that as well.
It's such a like, I don't even think about what it means. Like,
you don't. That's the thing, is like those things are so subconscious for us. And something else I was thinking about as well as you were talking as well, was when I look at sort of Western music and then music in our part of the world, here there's like, you know, we're in the sort of center of the materialist capitalist world, and everything is about like the perception, right, the surface. And music here, it's like, you know, you do still have older singers who are around and sing songs, but a lot of music here is like the next new artist, right, the next new band, and even band sort of stuff like Korea with K-pop, but here it's like much more individualized. It's just like one person singing in the West usually, right? Like we had Backstreet Boys maybe how many years ago, but it's very individualized. The people tend to look really good, and they tend to be younger as well. Sometimes you have like Delta Goodrum, right? And like you have those figures that like, you know, they still sing as they get older. But in our cultures, some of the biggest singers are the old ones. Right? They're the older singers. It's like they are the people who like, you know, even if they start singing when they're 20 or 30, they're still singing when they're 60, 70 or 80. And it's like, when I look at the artists I listen to, they're all like 60 years old. And older.
No,
right?
but you have to have but that's like that's the real shit though. Like if we're like actually like into the art of it, right? Like you have to understand that like you have to live a certain life to attain like the jewels or something. Do you know what I mean? Like attain like the actual like, because it's like you're like, if you're a singer, your body is the instrument, and if your body is like, you haven't lived through that much yet. Do you know what I mean? Like how are you gonna convey certain things that are like more ancient wisdom or something? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I feel like it's the same in Armenian culture too. So like we do have like older, it's like when you become not just Yerajish, not just a musician, but a varbet, like a master. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting. And you said something about like the elder knowledge, and that's something also really important in our culture, right? Again, universal thing, listen to your elders. But for us, it's like the elders are sort of, like, it's just this sort of cultural thing that we put onto them as like, and it's both good and bad, but it's like, you know, the older people know it, or the people who have endured it, the people who have sacrificed, which tend to be the older ones, which means you sometimes result in very corrupt or dogmatic systems.
Yeah.
But in other ways, it comes out like in art. It's just like, it's all the big ones. And in the Iranian context, like...
Well, there's like legacies, I feel, in Iran. Like Shahjaryan's son now is one of the biggest stars in Iranian classical music. You know, picked up the mantle from his father because he was growing around with it his whole life. If there's like a warrior who's above the age of like 60 and 70, they're the scariest because they're still alive, you know?
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That's the same with a singer. They've managed to go through their whole life singing this.
Yeah.
Reliving this pain, reliving this, you know, these moments of happiness, reliving it all on stage, by the way. Like, that shit is terrifying.
It's not that scary when you're, like, when you embody, though. Like, if you're, like you can't think about the audience, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, actually, like, they matter, but, like the point of being on stage is to, like, forget that and rather consider it, like, you are in that physical environment, that atmosphere inside of that room or whatever it is that you're performing in. It's about embodying the feeling and allowing that resonance, like, from within to kind of emanate out to, like, the furthest reaches of the room so that it kind of, like, envelops everything. And when you do that, like, there's no fear.
Yeah.
Because actually, like, the fear becomes something you transmute into action anyway. You turn it into a sound or you turn it into a movement. And, like, by doing so, you defeat it. Or, like, not really defeat, but, like, you sort of held down. It's like when you start shrinking yourself, that's when it gets... That's the trick.
Yeah, this lends to the theme, but the stage, like, mounting up a stage is a different experience to when you're playing, like, folk music or any other music, just more naturally.
Totally.
Like... if you're in just some room together and, you know, the singer's on the couch and playing songs like that, you don't feel like that disconnect on the boundary.
It's the structured versus the unstructured again, right?
Yeah,
it's like
institutions
folk
created
music where
stages.
it's like folk music being a bit sort of traditional remnants of a people or culture or something that transform over time and pick up new melodies. And, you know, it could be like the example you brought up. Like, it's like there's a bunch of people in Armenia going to different villages and picking up stories. And then what does the stage symbolize, right? Like the idea of the stage and stuff, it's like very against how it's like modernism, like Western stuff. At least, you know, we've always had stages, but you think about like music stages.
Not always.
Right?
Not always. Stages emerge with the creation of the state, actually.
Yeah.
Interesting. So even stages in...
There's no... I mean, like, there's no...
Because we had auditoriums, but that would be... different, like,
yeah,
right?
I mean, like, there's been structures that we've built before states. Like, we've built, like, you know, architecture, quote unquote, like, before states. And, like, sometimes we'd have things like amphitheaters, perhaps. But, like,
down,
I mean, like, that makes a lot more sense, right? An amphitheater where it's like, and also reflects, like, the structure of the underworld. Mwahaha, evil gang. But yeah, like, the state is what separated the performer from the audience. And before states, and also cultures that exist outside of states, the stage is like a foreign concept. It's like, why the fuck are you elevating one? Like, the point is to get, like, the spirits up. And that means there's no separation between musician and spectator or dancer or sorcerer or any of these fucking, like, shaman, like, all of these things. Everyone is, like, fluidly able to take on whatever role, and the point is to lift your fucking spirits, because that's what music is doing, right? Like, it's crazy. We fucking separated all that shit, like, for no reason. So sorry for swearing so much.
No,
I don't know.
okay. Speaking of, it's actually Astghik would like to have you not on the stage but on the floor adjacent to us.
Yeah, cool. So I'm gonna play for you an arrangement of a folk song that I did. I'm the one who arranged it onto the guitar, but it's a folk melody, and there are certain rhythms that accompany those melodies, and I try to kind of, like, put it all into the rhythms that I play on the guitar, the melodies that I play. Yeah, it's called Erzerumi Shoror. Shoror just means dance, basically, and Erzurum is region of what's now colonized Armenia. It's called Turkey now. But yeah, this is one of the villages that was genocided in from 1915 onwards in that in the Armenian genocide. And yeah, I wanted to play this song because I think it's a really beautiful piece that goes through a lot of different emotions. And I don't know, like I used to try to make songs that were kind of like on the sadder side of the thing, sadder side of the spectrum, but like I'm trying to be like, okay, look, yeah, horrible things happen to us, but like we gotta celebrate the culture itself actually, and I just want to like play a fucking like a dance, even if it's sometimes sad during the song anyway. Thanks for listening to that. That was Erzerumi Shoror. That was my arrangement of a folk song from the region of Erzurum, which is now colonized by what we call Turkey. And yeah, this is a melody of my genocided ancestors, and it's dedicated to everyone who... Sorry, I'm like sort of smiling and laughing, but it's absolutely horrible. But yeah, like it's dedicated to everyone who didn't survive the genocide in Erzurum. And yeah, I don't know. It's probably a good time to talk a little bit about what conditions we're currently in. So yeah, as mentioned before, we're recording this on the 27th of June, 2025. And the situation right now is quite bleak and uncertain. And we don't really know what's going to happen with the Zionist entity known as Israel, so-called Israel, in their attack against Iran, which is really sketchy for all of our people in the region, like for Armenians, Kurds, Persians alike.
Everyone.
I think Palestinians, obviously.
That would be that would become total war. And I think it's something when people are listening to music coming from a region nowadays, really have to be aware.
Yeah.
There's a famous saying, I forgot the name, but it was from a Palestinian poet saying why he can't write poetry that's not political.
Yeah.
Because he can't hear the birds sing. He can only hear the warplanes. It has to be political. That's the only thing he knows. A lot of art from the region really has to be taken out of context, or else it's like lip-washing bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, even like Erzerumi Shoror, it just sounds like a dance from a region, but then it's like, oh, that region was genocided and completely like everything was stolen. It became like the primitive accumulation of the Turkish Republic in the late Ottoman condition. And actually that genocide never really ended. Like Artsakh was invaded in 2020 in a 44-day war. Where horrible war crimes were committed that the entire world ignored. Beheadings, like mutilations, indiscriminate killing of civilians, all the things that they don't talk about as well, like, because it's just so horrific that we don't even talk about it. Because as we all know, like, genocidal war does affect the most marginalized first and foremost. And if they're beheading the men and we don't know what else... Yeah, I mean, that's ISIS shit. And then, like, 2023, the entire region was completely genocided, ethnically cleansed, and there's not a trace of any Armenians in Artsakh anymore. And because that was allowed to happen in 2023, not even 2 weeks later, like October 7 took the entire world's attention. And yeah, I think that, like, if Artsakh was not genocided, I don't think the genocide in Ethiopia against the population there, which used the same propaganda tactics, like, would have happened, or like the what's going on in Kashmir and like Palestine, like all of that shit. Like, it's the same propaganda machine, the same genocide machine. If you follow the money, it's entirely mutually upheld. And these genocidal imperialist states, like imperialist violent hegemons, this is what they are built and maintained off of. And it's terrifying seeing what's happening at the moment. But also I want to remind the listeners that we are strong and we can find our place in resisting this. Resistance means action, material action. It means putting your body to work for the liberation of all, because this is an international struggle and therefore it has to be internationalist in resistance. We can overcome our material conditions. We can overcome the nation state and all of its consequences. We can overcome capital. We can overcome power and hierarchy. It is possible. We've lived this way before. We're going to live this way again at some point in the future, and we are the ones that have the agency to drive the wheels of history towards liberation instead of mutually assured destruction, which is what we're all fearing right now.
I think of it like a cancer. There's the root of the cancer, which is in our context, in our region. A lot of it is based either in coming from Israel, and then the other imperialist powers like Russia and stuff there.
And Turkey.
Yeah, and Turkey keeps spreading, and you might be next.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Iranians have discovered this, that even in our institutionalized world of Tehran, where a lot of parallels to Western systems, and there's a lot of refugees now. So I think the lesson in the region is that what can happen there can happen to you. So you should really pay attention to the art that's coming out of there. We always talk about, like, it's almost a meme at this point. I mean, we all know, like, how the Middle East, always in conflict, war in the Middle East. It's like the sky is blue. That means you should be paying attention to the stories coming out of there.
Yeah, because it's deeply related to what we can expect here in the imperial core as well, because an injury to one is an injury to all. That's not just a statement, that's a fact, actually. What happens to Palestinians happens to you. That's how this shit works. Like, if they're using military equipment in a genocidal war, in a decade, that's going to be used against you when you're protesting or even rioting against fascist policies in your own conditions, like in your own locality. It's literally true. Yeah. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's a global truth, because capitalism is global.
Literally on the drive here, well, like, I was on a bus, and then like 10 minutes away from getting to 3CR, I look over and I'm like, is that like a tank? Like, I saw this like military, like the military vehicle police you see in America.
Yeah.
And it said it had like the Australian police thing on it. And I'm like, they have that here now?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's quite scary. I mean, for a lot of us in the Middle East and raised up, you know, in the diaspora, born in the diaspora in the West, and you kind of have this fragmentation of identity where it's like, you go for a few trips overseas, you come back, your mates are like, how was it? How did it go? And you're like, do I talk about the really weird, depressing stuff that requires so much substantial political and historical context? Or do I talk about the funny stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the
food,
thing,
yeah,
right.
Music.
And that's the thing. It's like, just like the piece that you played, or even when I think about Kurdish and Iranian culture, and I'm sure Armenian is similar to an extent, you've gone through such tragedies, and there's clearly such a systemic trauma embedded in the psyche of these people. Yet they're also people who they've suppressed it in one way, and they override it with this thing on humor. Like, they're very humorous people, like Iranians and Kurds, to the point it gets pretty toxic. Because that humor, it feels like every tragedy has to come with, like, you know, the humor to mask that. And you get that in music sometimes as well. It's like a lot of sad events in our Kurdish history, the songs commemorating them, some of them can be pretty sad, some of them can be pretty uplifting. Yeah. It's like the next step to be taken. Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting seeing what's happening in the Middle East. And like you said, Jahan, it's like a meme. It's things that constantly reoccur. Yeah, you hope that there will be a time when, you know, people get along and things go well, but under the confines of like a nation-state system, where identities are divided up into these borders, where identity transforms from the locality, like I'm from this village 500 years ago, to now I belong to some nation, and now like I'm meant to hate this person, or, you know, a group of people genuinely, because of a historical trauma of genocide and marginalization, seek statehood at a time when they experience a genocide, right? And then that creation of statehood, that need of security for them, was done on the dispossession of another.
Yeah,
right?
like Israel, obviously.
Yeah, that's and that's the thing. And it's like, and then we also have to look within ourselves. Often we can get into these like narratives of like, these things happen to us, but then we look at our own histories and we're like, wait a minute, we've also, and when I say we, it sounds strange, but being part of a nationality, you think of it as we've also done things. So like I think about Kurds, we have committed, I mean, a lot of our areas we have in Turkey that we're now popular, like they used to be Armenian areas. In Iran, a lot of them were Assyrian areas, right? In Iraq and Kurdistan, a lot of areas were previously Assyrian dominant and now go to the Kurds. And often the narrative for us is that we're the marginalized ones, but we were also the ones marginalizing others, doing cleansing and so forth.
But it's also like the material conditions that we exist and operate within condition us literally, because like in the case of like the Kurds contributing to the Armenian genocide, it was literally because you were promised certain concessions in the new republic of Turkey, right? Like that was like...
It was like economic stuff, and that's generally like, for me, it's hard for me to see stability in the region unless we can move towards a much more cohesive and uniformed identity that isn't so choked into these largely fabricated national narratives and historiographies, right? And it recognizes the differences. It doesn't try to create a uniform sort of thing, but it's a cohesive framework. And, for all of us on the left, that means moving beyond a nation state system. But even if I had to be a liberal and be like a EU sort of system in the Middle East, even that would be a nice stepping stone in the current liberal nation state world, right?
It would be a stepping stone that would be beholden to the material constraints, because every material condition, every new status quo is like a new kind of set of bindings that condition us into what behaviors we exhibit, what things we believe, what ideologies we are capable of possessing, and what we're going to do with our bodies, right? It's like, if you have that, it's like, cool, okay, I had a Azerbaijani journalist that I was speaking to at some point, not for an interview or anything, just casually. He was saying, yeah, we need to have a trans-Caucasian sort of democracy or something like that. So Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, and they should have a mini EU. And I'm just yeah, I could see why people want to take that as a step, but it's also you do realize that the reason why EU can do that is because it's a set of imperial core nation states that all global north economically, and so they can sustain that model. It's it's not going to really be the same when we apply those kinds of models to other places, and it's the material conditions are what condition us and what we are able to sort of reproduce within that set of conditions. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's I would love for there to be a clear path, and as leftists, we want to be oh yeah, read theory, read history, and then do some fucking cool shit. And it's yeah, but you're talking about theory and history of contexts that sure, they inform our current conditions because they are what got us here in the first place. But also, if we're really being materialists about this shit, we have to recognize that all of that theory and history is not going to liberate us, right? All that's going to liberate us is the praxis of revolution, and whatever mistakes we make on that path are going to condition what the post-revolutionary structure looks like, whatever that is. But all revolutionary theory is incomplete until after the revolution. We have to see it from that lens, because it's all been written from outside of the red lines of state ideology, but it's not that far outside of the red line. We don't really know what a society is going to look like in a post-nation state world. But we have to attempt to prefigure that in the present moment and find our path there that's as direct as possible. Stepping stones might be a thing, but every new status quo is going to have its set of constraints, and it's all going to condition us. And I don't know, I feel we've gotten to this historical moment where all of the ways we've been doing things have failed, whether it's liberal democracy, fascism, or fucking state communism and the ways that we've tried to do anarchist revolutions. All of these things have fucking failed, and we need to acknowledge that and understand that the path we have set out for us is pretty fucking hectically bleak right now. But it's chill. We got this. It might be purely luck if we manage to get through this shit. But there's also gonna be help along the way, unexpected. I think there's always things that we don't know, that revolution. We don't have to just reproduce the things we've already had and expect it to be any fucking different. We're gonna have to do something radical here.
Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying as well. Yeah, Jahan, I mean, I feel this is a perfect segue to what you're going to be playing today as well, that sort of idea of transcending nation-state identities.
Yeah, I guess it's time. Yeah, so actually I went deep into the realms of history, because I really think it is powerful to look up what happened way before you, way before the nation-states that you're familiar with, and to understand this is the music of the land. There is a timelessness to it. Yeah, so the songs that I'm picking is a reinterpretation of the songs called the İstanawa songs, which are in a language called Luwian, which is in modern day Turkey. There's a pattern here, I feel. But on the other side, they were an Indo-European speaking people, famous for their occultist practices.
Hell yeah, represent. Evil sorcerer gang.
Oh, it gets really crazy because they reckon that that's the language that the Trojans spoke. I thought this was so interesting, and I looked into it. A lot of like crazy theories, and there was actually, I was reading how people reckon that the Trojans, their punishment was occultism.
Their punishment?
Why they got invaded? It wasn't because of such. It was because of their occultist magic and how they were so I felt that was like, it's pretty powerful. And there's been some really recent research by a young historical linguist called Oscar Billing, who dissected parts of his Istanawa songs. We don't have any notation, of course. Like the idea of this kind of, like treble clef, bass clef notation is very, very new and institutionalized. However, he managed to work out the accented, like how it sounds. So I'll be doing a pretty typical thing of historical amplification and using modern instrumentation and, modern musical brain in trying to like bring these words to life. It's a series of rituals, and yeah, let's go.
Nice.
Kaskalan kui in aati kui is nimiya ani. Kaskalan kui in aati kui is nimiya ani. Tusani yalas mi ayatar payu. Kimita duwanta wasupadu. Lilialu, lila liu, lila ondu, anding inzi, kuuma I inzi a.
So those lyrics, they're all from different tablets. If you notice, there was like 3 sections to this kind of composition. The first one goes lila ilu, lila ilu, lila andu, anding inzi, ku umma im inzia. Maybe butchering some of the pronunciation. My Hittite Luwian isn't great. But it means, I must purify from sin. They should purify from sin. The gods, the pure ones. Of course, some of these translations are very murky. It's really crazy work what these historical linguists do to kind of try to connect us to these words. It continues. Za'an ni'in kaskal'an ku'i'in a'ati ku'i'is nimiya ani. An na an ili. Dudu umma nita'an. Which translates, this is it, the divine offering pit which he makes. He is one of a kind. You should always listen to that person. You in plural. And then finally, this is the really interesting part when I play the tambur as a percussion instrument, which is Dusanyalasmi ayatarpayu timita duwanta wasupadu. May the creator of strong lungs give me agency. May he or she benevolently confer boons upon me. That last part was translated by Oscar Billing, and he managed to work out the rhythm of it, which is Dusani Yalasmi. It's in triads, except for some of the last phrases. It's a direct lineage to how one reads the Iliad or the Odyssey. It's very ironic that this is most likely the language of the Trojans. So we can see kind of how the victors of history managed to replicate the Luwian style into their own songs. And so maybe they've been forgotten, but by bringing the language back to a little spot like here, it does help, preserve their spirit and, what they were doing.
That was really beautiful. I'm so happy that I got to hear that. Thank you, Jahan.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, I guess I chose it just because of that timelessness. I'm
Totally.
really attached to that.
Yeah, and the choice of the rhythms is really cool. Like the cadence is really cool. And yeah, it kind of helps if you listen to this old stuff, it's trying to get into that musical logic or something like that, because it is something that's kind of echoed today, but it's a different form of it, a earlier form of it or something like that. It's really fucking cool. The use of rhythmic enunciations. It's basically like rapping.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
ancient rapping. Hittite Luwian raps.
It's funny, at the introduction of this whole thing, I said, folk music is a Western term. And even the idea of a 3-minute song that you put on an album, that is kind of a modern creation.
Totally. We used to do folk medleys, because it's you have a bunch of melodies that are the same tempo, the same key, they work well in sequence, and you make a folk melody as a medley of folk melodies.
Yeah, and we still have that in our cultures as well, right? We I forgot what the specific term in Kurdish is, but it's just 5 to 10 minutes, and it's similar, it's in the same sort of scale, similar melody, and they mash up the songs. And it was an Armenian one I listen to quite often on YouTube, but I can't say the name for the life of me. And it's 10-15 minutes of his Armenians coming out in war-looking gear.
Yeah.
It starts off ancient, and then gets more and more modern.
Yeah,
and then the melodies build up into drums and stuff. I'm a sucker for that.
Oh my god, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that shit. It's crazy.
Oh my god. That's what I love about resurgent neo-folk revival through Wardruna and stuff. We need Kurdish, Armenian, Iranian, Uzbek Wardrunas.
And it's interesting as well, a lot of, because there's that Peter guy that you mentioned as well on YouTube.
Oh, Peter Pringle. He's so
the
cool.
Epic of Gilgamesh and stuff. And it's the same with what you were saying with the stuff you're saying now, right? With their language, the vowels feel so much more shortened. It feels more dum dum dum. Yeah,
they do it on purpose for extending the vowels to make it into one syllable, the la I a, that kind of stuff.
Interesting. So
so that was one of the main indications, is that the way you chant it was different to the way you say it. And that's why Luwian is actually an interesting language, because I read it, because it was a language used for so much chanting. It evolved in a different way from Hittite is its closest ancestor, or closest linguistic cousin. So it's a really, really fascinating thing. And the thing is, there's so many languages like this in our region. So many. Sumerian blows my mind, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It's crazy, and it's a language isolate. It's the first ever scripts were done in Sumerian. So anyway,
Bring back Sumeria.
oh, actually, oh,
I
man.
wanna chill on my rooftop, like when it's too hot. Like, we should be having rooftop barbecues.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about it. I mean, yeah, for people who don't know, Peter Pringle, he's I guess algorithm core. He gets millions of views on YouTube.
Is this that white guy? That,
Yeah,
like, he
yeah.
has like a hectic tan. Like he's trying to be like.
A tan? I don't. Does he have-
He's the guy that's like singing the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah. Like drenched in reverb.
Yeah.
the echoes of time.
Classic.
The holes of time. He does, like, obviously the music he plays on the instrument. He usually takes actually like old Persian instruments, like tambur or santur or something. But he recites, old Sumerian or Babylonian or something. And linguistically, it's actually very accurate.
Yeah,
what he
cool.
does. So it's a good indication, and
It's a reconstruction. I would love I would love to have a time machine, go back and like see how these things were performed. Like there's so many.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Without crazy physics, can't literally listen to how they did it. But when you see how these things are written down, you feel that like the spirit, we are like able to understand the spirit of how they were sung or chanted. Because when we talk about like the Kurdish storytelling, like it's exactly the same. You might have like a little melody you remember at certain parts of the story, but you just go on a little tangent, a little improv guitar solo in between phrases, and
No, it's beautiful. And like, just like you said, just having, linguists going back and reconstructing it, and even just being able to read it, right? Like seeing what the rhythm of it is like. And it's like, it was never really, in most cases, when it comes to cultures, like there was never really one pure form. It's like anything else in a cultural dynamic, it's ever changing and flexible. And even back then, and when they would have, sung these rituals or that thing as well, it would have changed over time as well. But being able to like resurrect something that's been lost for so long is just like, it's beautiful.
So, closing statements, anything?
Free Palestine, free Artsakh, free Iran, free Kurdistan. May all of our people be free. May we have Khodavat in the homeland. May we sing each other's folk musics together. Shall the international revolution persevere? Shall we overcome these dark times? And may there be peace on this fucking planet, finally.
Yeah, I mean, literally everything you just said.
Hell yeah.
Except for maybe I'll add Make Samaria Great Again.
Make Samaria Great
I'm
Again?
very passionate about that.
Yeah.
This discussion that we
Masa.
had. But yeah, in general, no, it was just great. It was interesting being able to like, just even like a brief time like today, just like sit down and it's like, hey, that's similar. Hey, that's different. Like just being able to converse, with someone who's Armenian, like, and sure, it's always in a proximity in your region and there's cultural similarities, but there's differences as well. Like it's almost like a language isolate, right? And it was interesting hearing the story about like the Armenian folk thing of like going to different villages and collecting stories and stuff, and what sort of differs from that. And I think one of my favorite discussions today was this idea of like music and stuff being structured and unstructured, right? Like the unstructured chaoticness and the flexibility to the more like performative stage sort of dynamic. And it was great being able to see the reconstruction of a very ancient piece. So, yeah.
Oh, let's hope Louis and ghosts weren't.
I think they're stoked that someone is singing their music again.
Yeah.
I think it's celebrated in the underworld.
Thank you so much for listening to us for almost 2 hours. Please be aware, like, our region is really suffering, always, daily. Therefore, it's important, first of all, to amplify our voices, but not in like an identity politics way, just to understand what is happening.
It's about ecology of discourse, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, we say like amplify marginalized voices, but like, are people ready to hear like what we're trying to say? I wonder.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and this is a way to observe the region away from headlines. Like, it's important to read what's happening, like, literally, but that's only on a surface level, because people become statistics, and the powers that be take the stage that they built.
Yeah, and every single one of those numbers in those statistics is a life that's just as important as you, the listener. Your life is equal to one number on those genocide tallies that the headlines are. They're not numbers, they're people just like you. And like, please don't dehumanize us, because that's deadly.
Want to thank the Emerging Writers Festival for helping us put up this discussion. Valuable, and it's great that we have, even in the midst of the state, we do have some initiatives that help us, amplify these kind of voices. Also like to thank 3CR, who similarly do an amazing work here in Naarm to help amplify such voices and stories. And thank you, the listener.
And thank you, Jahan.
Thank you, Jahan.
Oh yeah, no, of course, yes. But thank you, Damoon and Astghik. It's been a great time. And also a massive thank you to Sound Tech for today, Tilda and Luna, who did a fantastic job helping us set up and bring this emission to you.